And thank you again for being with us for the Twins Wrap with Dick Bremer, the television voice of the Minnesota Twins, brought to you by Jefferson Lions. I am Derek Hansen. Dick, it's great to have you back and talking a little bit about baseball again. Those 4 days, it seems like forever for that All-Star break.
Yeah, it was a good break, a welcome break, I think, particularly for the Twins. They literally and figuratively went into the break limping a little bit, and they came out of the break with a good series against Cleveland. So the hope is that it's not too much of a disruption. The Twins obviously had a tremendous first half, and they're going to have, I think, have to have a tremendous second half if they're going to hold off the Indians and win the division.
They did what they had to do this past weekend. As a Twins fan, I'm greedy. I want the sweep, but you go in leading by 5.5 games, you win the series, you pick up a game, and that, going on the road, that's kind of what you have to do, right?
Yeah, and I think there were some comments made. It was kind of a statement series and all that, and I'm not that big into that. I think if anything, Twins won 2 out of 3. That was great, but I think they saw firsthand the Indians aren't going away. This team, the Cleveland team, typically has played very well in the second half, and there's still a healthy lead, 6 games and all that. But Cleveland is going to be there. They're going to have some good runs. They're going to take some runs at the Twins here in the second half. So the Twins are going to have to play good baseball. They will not coast at all to a division title.
If the Twins end up winning the American League Central, I'm not going to forget the Friday night after the All-Star game because it looked like everything was going the wrong way for the Twins. They come back and win, and that was, to me, kind of the tell signs that this team, even without C.J. Cron, even without Eddie Rosario, they're just going to be a tough team to beat all year, too.
Yeah, it was really of a significant win on Friday, in part because the Indians went into the All-Star break with a 6-game winning streak. And if they'd won that first game and trimmed the lead back to 5 games or whatever, well, now, there's maybe a little more pressure on the Twins on Saturday. But to come back and win that game Friday, and they came so close to doing the same thing Sunday afternoon. There are 10 games left between the two teams. But I think significantly the next 7 are after the trade deadline. So we'll see what the Twins do and what the Indians do before the end of the month. But the next 7 games with Cleveland are a target field, and that should give the Twins hopefully a little bit of an edge.
Yeah, I think it's good that they do have this, not too bad to go on the road where the All-Star game was, and you got Cleveland, there's still excitement there, but this home stretch comes at a good time because it seems like you guys have been on the road for a long time, it seems.
Yeah, and now starting tonight with this game against the Mets, essentially 3 of the next 4 weeks of the season will be spent at Target Field. There's a week-and-a-half-long homestand. And the Twins are on the road for a week, then they come back with another week-and-a-half-long homestand. So not that this team has played substantially better at home than they have on the road because they've been tremendous on the road, but it's always nicer to be at home, particularly when you have a chance to, extend, a homestand for a week and a half. This should be hopefully a really encouraging next 4 weeks for the Twins.
It was crazy to see Max Kepler and what happened with Bauer hitting 5 home runs in a row. I mean, that was, and I think even Bauer was like, what the heck? I'm throwing a fastball. I'm throwing a breaking ball. He's hitting everything I'm throwing at him.
Yeah, and, Bauer, I mean, this is not a Scott Klingenbeck or somebody like that. This guy's one of the best arms in the game. And to hit 5 home runs in 5 at-bats within a season, something that's never been done before in baseball. And it really was remarkable. And maybe one of the best parts of it all, I don't know Trevor Bauer at all. I've nodded at him and maybe said hi once or twice. But he had a little self-deprecating video that he put out on social media afterwards, which I thought kind of made the whole sequence of at-bats against Kepler against Bauer kind of succinctly said it all. It was really kind of a nice thing that he put together and put out on Twitter.
I think in a long baseball season, you almost have to do that, right? I remember when I went out to Dodger Stadium, I think I ran into you out there in 2005, and he stopped Choi. Brad Radke told me, and I can't say all the words he said, I threw him 4 pitches, and he hit 3 of them out. I don't know if you remember that game, and it's just some days it happens like that.
Well, yeah, and you've got to have the ability to laugh at yourself. The punchline to that story, I remember that game very well. Before the Twins left town that day, someone got a piece of Los Angeles Dodgers stationery, and when we got home, typed up a letter supposedly from Hesop Troy asking Brad Radke that if he were selected to the home run derby before the All-Star game, could he select Brad Radke as his pitcher, and then signed somebody, scribbled in Hesop Troy or whatever. And that was a clubhouse prank on Radke. But, you do have to laugh at yourself and be willing to laugh at yourself over the course of a long season.
One thing that's not a laughing matter is a spectacular catch again by Byron Buxton, but at what cost?
Well, we'll wait and see. Now, there's a chance Byron could be activated before this game here tonight. I think it's more likely that it'll be another day or two. But my goodness, if you're a Twins fan, how can you not love the way this guy plays? We've seen him go back, crash into a fence a number of times and concuss himself. Now we've seen him come in, make a diving catch, and essentially do the same thing. Rocco Baldelli was saying before the All-Star break that there are a lot of guys on the team that have given up their bodies, and nobody embodies that more than Byron Buxton. He's absolutely fearless. He considers every ball hit in his general direction to be one that he should catch. And he's just a fabulous guy to watch, and why his long-term health is really a key part for the Twins as they move forward.
It's amazing. Some organizations, I don't care what sport it is, they seem to be defined by a certain type of role. Like the Bears have had Butkus and Ditka and all these. And then you look at Singletary as a middle linebacker. I should say not Ditka, and then of course the Packers had Favre and Starr and the center fielders for the Twins, Pocket. Denard Span had a shot. I can't forget Torrey Hunter, obviously, and now we have Byron Buxton. It's just amazing how defensively they've had these great center fielders.
Yeah, it's been a nice run in the case of, not so much Kirby. Kirby was an acrobat. I don't know that I ever saw the man dive for a ball the way we saw Byron dive for the ball in Cleveland. But Torrey Hunter still talks about making diving catches at the Metrodome and the buttons on his jersey melting with the friction with the artificial turf. As much as it's fun for all of us to watch that, imagine if you're on the mound and you've given up maybe a deep fly to center field, and yet you see your center fielder go back and make a catch a split second before he crashes full speed into the wall. What that must mean for you as a pitcher, that you've got guys behind you that are literally fearless enough to go out and get the ball. As long as it's within reach, they're going to go out and catch it for you.
All right, Dick, thanks so much. We'll call you right back after the top of the hour. Dick Bremer, again, the Twins wrap with the television voice of the Minnesota Twins, Dick Bremer. Brought to you by Jefferson Lines, your number one bus experience for over 100 years, serving North Dakota and cities throughout the Midwest. I'm Derek Hansen. Jack Sunday will be back to wrap up the Drive Time News Hour in just a bit. And then part two with Dick Bremer coming up after the CBS World News Roundup and KFGO News with Paul Juergens to kick off Couch Potato Radio. And then it's game one of a two-game series against the New York Mets, live from Target Field. Corey Provis with the call, as always. Dan Gladden and Chris Atterbury back in the studio. 6:30 is the pregame show here on the mighty 790 KFGO. Thanks so much for being with us again. This is Couch Potato Radio. Derek Hansen with you on the mighty 790 KFGO. Featuring part two of the Twins wrap with the television voice of the Minnesota Twins, Dick Bremer. It's brought to you by Jefferson Lines, your number one bus experience for over 100 years, serving North Dakota and cities throughout the Midwest. Let's talk a little bit about the pitching staff. Pitching always seems to come up. And you got Michael Pineda tonight. And, the thing I feel bad for Berrios, he didn't have a bad start on Sunday. He's just facing a guy who's red hot with Bieber right now. So, yeah, you and I talked so much pitching, and Odorizzi I thought looked good on Saturday. We got July 31st coming up. It's never going to end, but it's going to be interesting here with Perez and Pineda to see just exactly how this rolls for him, and maybe calm down that rumor mill, or maybe it's going to pick it up even more.
Yeah, I think if you stood back and took a look at the rotation over the last month or so, you'd probably say that Michael Pineda has been the Twins' most reliable starter over the last month or so. We've seen Odorizzi have some hiccups along the way. Berrios has been a little uneven. Gibson's had a couple of disappointing starts, and Perez is hopefully rounding back into shape. So Pineda's actually been the most reliable Twin starter over the last month and a half. So if you go out and get a starting pitcher, whether it's Marcus Stroman, Madison Bumgarner, whatever, then who do you take out of the rotation? And do you take someone out that might stand a chance of being, helpful to you out of the bullpen, or do you address the bullpen immediately, which is, I think, the way most people think the Twins are going to move before the end of this month, that they might bring in a reliever or two. The fact of the matter is, Derek, there are no Justin Verlanders out there right now. A couple of years ago, the Astros made a shrewd move because they were able to get Verlander, extend him, and he's been the anchor of that rotation now moving forward. Well, there's no one out there like that. I don't think even the most diehard Madison Bumgarner proponent would tell you that he's the same pitcher he was 5 years ago when he basically won the World Series for the Giants. So it'll be interesting to see what the Twins do. It'll be interesting to see what the Indians do. Right now, that's about all that Twins fans should care about, whether the Indians are going to be in position to potentially add themselves or whether they will sell and trade Trevor Bauer, maybe another piece or two, because they don't think that they can catch the Twins and don't want to delay what might be a rebuilding process for them in the hopes of maybe getting into the wild card game.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing, the factor of getting in the wild card game or not. How much do you put your eggs into the basket there, right? I mean, I'm sure this is a much deeper move than just wins and losses for the Cleveland Indians right now.
Well, remember where the Twins were just a couple of years ago and how quickly things can change. They were buyers, and then a week later, right before the end of the month, they were sellers. And, there's going to be some of that, I suspect, even more so now because, there is no August waiver trade deadline at the end of August anymore. You've got to decide what you are in terms of a team, a contender, a pretender, or a rebuilder. You've got to make that decision now before the end of the month. And that's why, there are a lot of teams that should be adding, like the Twins. There are some teams that might add, but might more be likely to sell. Maybe the Indians are in that group. But if you're a general manager right now or a head of a baseball department, you've got to take a cold, hard look at where you're at, where you want to be, and what moves you need to make before the end of this month, not the end of August.
As you mentioned, everyone's speculating on bullpen moves. Dick Bremer with us, television voice of the Minnesota Twins, brought to you by Jefferson Lines. This is the Twins Wrap. And if they can get someone to back up Taylor Rogers, who's, wow. I mean, what more can you say? This kid is, you could see it coming, I think, the past couple of years, but he is lights out right now.
Yeah, and he's been very durable, but you don't want to overextend him either. If there's someone out there, Ken Giles, if he's healthy, there's a little concern about his elbow right now. Ken Giles could be a big addition for the Twins if the asking price isn't too high, because he has closed. He throws upper 90s. He's right-handed. He'd be a nice complement with Rogers, but I do think they need to add another left-handed reliever. Now that can come from within. Maybe a Devin Smeltzer could be up here and pitch out of the bullpen. But you don't want to go into these big series, potentially big series in August and September with just one left-hander out of your bullpen. So I can see the Twins adding a reliever or two, maybe even three, but almost certainly one of them would be a left-handed reliever, I think.
He really does have a rubber arm. He almost jokes about it. Doesn't take me very long to warm up or whatever. I'm usually pretty good to go. I haven't seen anything like that in a long time.
Well, in the game he pitched, I forget whether it was Friday or Saturday. I think it was the Friday game when he came out of the pen and pitched 2 innings. Then I went back to the hotel room and I watched the Cleveland rebroadcast because I wanted to see. I don't spend a whole lot of time when I announce the game looking at the monitor. I wanted to see from the center field camera whether what I saw from behind home plate was actually what was happening, and it was. Rogers, completely cold-blooded, it appears, was able to Friday and again Saturday, just 1 inning, not just throw strikes, but throw high-quality strikes that are down and in on the corner, up and away in the corner, on the edges of the strike zone, with very rarely a pitch down the middle. And to have that kind of ice water in your veins and in the big moment like that and being asked to come back for a second inning and deliver pitches like that really speaks to how good of a relief pitcher the Twins have in Taylor Rogers.
Well, coming up, hopefully we can get Eddie Rosario back here and healthy and ready to go. I know he was chomping at the bit to go this past weekend in Cleveland. And I said this yesterday. I don't know if you'll like this analogy or not, but it seems like when you talk about the starting nine and the lineup, that it's kind of every part of a vehicle, right? And although Eddie, he seems like he's nitrous. I don't know if you agree with me on that. He just seems to add a little punch. They got so many good hitters, but he is something special.
Yeah, and the Twins have missed him in the lineup. There's no question about that. They've also missed C.J. Cron. And one thing for Twins fans to look forward to now, and it's a wonderful problem to have, but there are going to be some tough roster decisions to make here. I think Twins fans are like me. They want to see Luis Arraez in the lineup. But as you add players, you still only get 25. As you add players, let's say Rosario, okay, well, maybe you send Jake Cave down to the minor leagues. But then what do you do when C.J. Cron comes back to the 25-man roster? Who goes? Does somebody else get hurt? Do you have to put someone else on the injured list to accommodate Cron? Or do you have to send Arraez back to the minor leagues? My goodness, the guy looks like he's going to be an all-star player for the Twins for many years. So it's a wonderful problem to have, and not one we could have imagined just a couple of years ago, but the Twins have an awful lot of talent on the 25-man roster and beyond, as long as they're all healthy.
Does that bring up the fact as we get closer to July 31st, the hard trade deadline, that usually it's prospects for players who are starters? And I think the Twins broke that mold with Terry Ryan when they traded Matt Lott in 2001 when they were chasing Cleveland. Could maybe they make a move with one of these guys who are just on the cusp and always bouncing back and forth instead of a young prospect?
Well, I think maybe not specifically him, but one of the guys who would fit in that category would be Jake Cave. To me, Jake Cave's a major league outfielder. And I think, to be honest, he would be a starting outfielder for the four other teams in the American League Central. But he is stuck in kind of a state of a limbo with the Twins because when they're healthy, there's no spot to carry him. He's an athlete. He runs really well. He's got pop in his bat, and he probably needs to be up in the major leagues, getting a lot of at-bats and refining himself as a hitter, more than going to Rochester and winning a couple of, International League Player of the Week awards. I don't think he has much of anything left to prove in the AAA level. So he might be someone that the Twins would have to part with to bring in a piece. But again, you bring somebody in now, whether it's a pitcher, I can't imagine the Twins bringing in a position player. But if you bring in anybody else and add them to the 25-man roster, well, then again, someone needs to go off the 25-man roster. And there's some guys, the Twins, frankly, like A-Ray Adrianza, they don't want to lose him. They think he's a key part to what's going on here. So, it's going to be a fascinating next couple of weeks here in advance of the trade deadline to see, in particular, how the Twins, how active they are and at what cost, both in the minor league system and on the 25-man roster.
Yeah, that was another name I was thinking of as far as maybe a guy within the 40-man that they'd maybe have to dish off here because, if they're looking for a bullpen help, that's what they'd have to do. And I'll say this about the Twins organization, and you know this more than I do. When you talk to some of the front office people there, they understand we are talking about people here, not widgets, and they really want an opportunity. If they know there's a logjam for a certain player, they want to bury them. They want to give them an opportunity. They're pretty down to earth with that.
Well, yeah, and Adrianza is a great example of that. They've put him pretty much anywhere on the field, and he's been very professional. He's been really good at the plate. He's been reliable in the field. He basically is becoming what Marwin Gonzalez has already become, and he's out of options. So if you say, okay, we're going to activate Cron and Rosario, and we're going to try to sneak Adrianza through waivers, he'll be gone. You'll lose him. And that's what the Twins don't want to risk with Adrianza. I think they've got a great opinion of him, both as a player and a potential, manager in the minor leagues, maybe even the big leagues down the road. They just love the guy beyond the numbers he puts together on the field, and they, because of that, don't want to lose him.
Should be a good one tonight, the start of a 9-game home series. I'm sure he'll be enjoying that, starting with the Mets for a 2-gamer and then 4 against the A's. Kind of a quirky part of the schedule, but Michael Pineda going tonight and should be a fun run for you.
Yeah, it should be a fun homestand, and we expect big crowds. We hope for good weather and hope the Twins can continue to do what they've done at home, which is roughly win 2 out of every 3. It's going to be a fun homestand.
All right. Thanks so much, Dick. I do appreciate it. We'll talk to you next Tuesday in the middle of that Yankee series.
You got it, Derek.
The television voice of the Minnesota Twins, Dick Bremer. Again, the Twins Wrap brought to you by Jefferson Lines, your number one bus experience for over 100 years, serving North Dakota and cities through the Midwest. Again, Corey Provis, the radio play-by-play voice. He'll kick things off along with Chris Atterbury and Dan Gladden live from Target Field tonight. The first of two against the Mets. And as I said, starting on Thursday, 4 games at Target Field against the A's, and then 3 games Monday through Wednesday of next week against the New York Yankees. We'll talk to Dick again next Tuesday in the middle of that series. But again, the Mets at the Twins tonight, 6:30, very shortly. That wraps up Couch Potato Radio. Derek Hansen with you. A full Couch Potato Radio with that Twins day game over on the Fan tomorrow. 6 o'clock, 6 until 8, tomorrow night here on the mighty 790 KFGO.